Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Talbot. I'm Managing Director and Head of Research here at Red Cloud Securities, and I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on uranium today. We are going to hear from ATCO Mining CEO Etienne Moshevich and Director Neil McCallum. Now, during today's webinar, they will provide an overview and outlook, and then we will take some questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can. But before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this ATCO webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I direct listeners to the forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of the corporate presentation, and that can be found on the company's website, atcomining.com. For Red Cloud Securities, I'd highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. So please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on ATCO Mining. So with that, I now turn it over to Etienne and Neil to update the audience on ATCO. Take it away, guys.
Thank you very much for setting this up, guys. We really appreciate it. I guess I'll start off the presentation and then move it over to Neil. So my name is Etienne. I'm the CEO of ATCO. I'm also the largest shareholder. I'm the single largest shareholder of the company. Myself and our team, I wanted to start a clean energy company, and that was my goal. And a few years ago, we started off with acquiring several projects on the southwestern of Newfoundland. And the reason we wanted to do that was a few years ago in August, the German Chancellor and Justin Trudeau signed a clean energy bill that they were going to be building these clean energy projects off the coast of Newfoundland. And they're all going to have to store their hydrogen somewhere. And so what we wanted to do was acquire as much land off the coast as we possibly could, where there were possible salt domes. And in salt domes, you could possibly store hydrogen. And they're going to have to store their hydrogen once they build these clean energy projects. So we were hoping that some of our salt domes, first we'll be able to confirm that there is salt in them, and they'll be able to store their hydrogen in these domes. So what we did was we acquired a few of these projects, and then we waited. And unfortunately, government timeline isn't the same as our timeline as a microcap company listed on the CSE. But what they did was the Canadian government did give bids to 4 different companies, and they even announced that they were going to be spending in total $66 billion in this area to build these clean energy projects. And like I said, they're all going to have to store their hydrogen somewhere. And so we still have these projects, but unfortunately, we're on their timeline. So we're still waiting on updates from the government on when they're going to get started, when they're going to be finishing these projects, and so forth. And so while we're still waiting on those, this is kind of how Neil and I were talking. And Neil, who's on our webinar with us right now, is a director of ATCO. He is, he won't always boast about himself, but I'll do that for him. He's an incredible geologist. He was one of the founders of the Corvette project for Patriot Battery for PMET. And that stock, obviously, as you guys saw, went from 40 cents to about $18 a share. And he was instrumental in that. And so he's been an incredible addition to our team. And he came over to us and said, he's cut his teeth in the uranium sector. That's how he started. And he came over to us, being involved with Standard Uranium. He came over to us and said, look, they have an incredible project where there's a lot of money spent on it and it's drill ready. And at that time, we're sitting at a $2.5 million market cap with $1.25 million in cash. So half of our market cap was sitting in cash. And he came over to us and he showed us the Atlantic project. And we went through the Atlantic project and we absolutely loved it. And it was, like I said, they had a ton of money spent on it and it's drill ready. So we cut a deal where we can acquire up to 75% of the project, and over 3 years, and get going on it. And so we didn't want to get a project. We thought in this market, getting a project that was not drill ready wasn't going to gain us any traction. We wanted something where, we have cash in the bank and we wanted to drill and give our shareholders a real chance of success. And that's exactly what we did. So we cut a deal with Standard. We got the uranium project, the Atlantic project, and we started to drill. And we completed 5 holes. And I'll let Neil kind of go through those results that we just issued about 10 days ago, and to go through on what those results mean. But as of right now, unfortunately, uranium isn't as hot as it was, even 4 to 6 months ago. But we believe this always happens in every cycle. We believe in the fall, hopefully in the fall or even sooner, there's going to be a re-rating, and companies with a substantial project are going to get rewarded. And we hope to be one of them. We're sitting at a $2 million market cap with about 75 million shares outstanding. I'm the largest shareholder, and one way or another, I need to make it work for myself and my shareholders. And so I'll let kind of Neil walk through the past results that we've had.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Etienne. I guess we'll advance the slides to, first of all, backing up around the Athabasca Basin and why there. Just for those that aren't familiar with it, it's without a doubt the best place to be looking for high-grade uranium. It's just several orders of magnitude average grade higher than other areas in the world. Saskatchewan is a great place to be looking. It's rating number 3, continually rated high, and right now number 3 on the Fraser Institute place to essentially do exploration and develop projects all the way to the mining stage. So at the moment, it's about 20% of the world's supply. And it's just without a doubt the place to be. And there are a lot of areas that still are open for discovery. That goes to show by the number of recent discoveries, including the Arrow discovery made by NextGen, Patterson Lake South, made by Fission, uranium triple R is another one close by too. So it's just without a doubt the best place to be looking for uranium worldwide, not just Canada. Going to show the value of what we could potentially find there. Again, uranium, you can talk all day long about uranium price, but if you find a deposit in the Athabasca Basin, even if you're in the trough in the low period of the uranium price, you're still building value. So that's why people continually come back to the Athabasca Basin, just the amount, considering 1% U3O8, depending on what the prices are. This looks like it's from February 24. That's equivalent to roughly 32 gram per ton gold, which, people can understand that just a little bit better if they're not familiar with uranium. And deposits in the Athabasca Basin can be upwards of 10 to 20% in some zones. So that's incredibly rich ore to be potentially looking for. So the idea for the Atlantic project, this is a project that I have been looking at for quite a while in the Eastern Athabasca Basin. That is kind of the bread and butter of exploration for uranium in the Athabasca Basin. There are new areas of the basin that we're finding deposits. Like I mentioned, in the western side, we have NextGen, Fission, making amazing discoveries, but the traditional exploration model was developed in the eastern side of the basin. So what we're looking at on the Atlantic project, it is a fairly straightforward story using pretty straightforward traditional exploration methods. So we're not really reinventing anything on this project. The work that Standard had done really was proof of concept from a targeting perspective. They and the team, Sean Hilliker and everyone else, we did the exploration in terms of compiling the geophysics, conducting a ground-based gravity survey, and that is kind of like all we need to do to get it to the drill-ready stage. This was work conducted to define potential areas of gravity low where it might coincide with a alteration zone for potentially the uranium at depth. So this was conducted over the last few years, and that's when we had ATCO join on and starting the drill program in March of 2024, and that's just what we did. One other thing before I get into the details on the geology, the nerdy stuff, is to just mention how close to infrastructure this project is. There are 3 main claim blocks. The one that we started on has the highway from all the way down south up to the northern end of the Athabasca Basin. It goes right through that claim block. On that map there, it's busy, but you can see a brownish colored line go through. That's the highway. So straightforward to drill. Drill costs are low. There's other great targets on the other projects to the east, and we'll get to that later on. But there's no shortage of targets on this project. Despite not being the largest project out there, it's still around 3,000 hectares, which is a fantastic size project to find more than enough drill targets. Some projects, if they're too big, you just spread your energy all around without getting anywhere. One other thing to mention that's very important for Saskatchewan is that it's a little bit of an evolving First Nations engagement and permitting situation, and with Standard Uranium being a part of that project for a while, it's fully permitted and agreements are in place with the First Nations group, the Yethanani group, which represents several of the northern communities across the Athabasca Basin. So all of that's in place. We don't need to worry about that. That's taken care of. So I don't need to talk about getting into uranium. We can talk a little bit about Standard Uranium, of which, of course, I'm a part of, as well as Sean Hilliker, VP Exploration. He comes from the discovery and development of the Arrow deposit for NextGen. So he is very well versed. He did his master's thesis, PhD, or I can't remember which one, but he basically did his research directly on that deposit in addition to doing the exploration. So he's very well versed in the details of uranium in this area. So he's been a great part of that team advancing the projects together. Getting into the project a little bit more. As I mentioned, this is one of the images for the gravity survey. And there's all sorts of gravity lows. That would be the blue areas on the map. Without getting into too many details, I think the next slide shows the actual drill holes. This is some of the historical work conducted by, all the names out there. Cameco, Denison have had this project in the past, parts of it anyways, and they have done very regional, very basic exploration, just touching a few holes into the project. And the little bit of work that they have done, has come up with favorable indications of uranium. So we have some low amounts of uranium in and around the unconformity, which tells us that we're close to potentially something more. In addition to that, one hole from BE04 is the one to highlight, and that'll be shown on a different map. Found base metals, which is obviously not what we're looking for, but it sometimes occurs with uranium. So we can have this mineralizing system dropping out uranium in some areas. In some areas it drops out base metals, including lead. Zinc is not a common one, but that's definitely something to be following up when we have odd things. Obviously, when we're looking for uranium, we're looking for anomalies, and that's definitely an interesting anomaly to follow up. Having the basal sandstone elevated in uranium is a great sign in several historical holes, so that's very encouraging for us. Again, we don't need to get into too many details on what Standard did, other than to say that it was a ground-based gravity survey that we used for targeting. This slide here is roughly outlining what we've done on the project in terms of the drilling on one of the targets that was generated up in the north here. The drilling was concentrated in this northern area to explain that gravity survey anomaly, and that's just what we did. A good part of what we found was alteration in the form of dravite clay alteration that is very promising, and you can kind of see in this next slide here that we've done a 3D model on the gravity, and lo and behold, a lot of the drilling is, this is the targeting model, but we definitely encountered that in the drilling. So that's very encouraging, and next steps will be essentially doing more ground geophysics on the different property blocks that we have not yet done, and then follow that up with drilling. Is that fair to say, Etienne?
That's definitely our plan. We got to do some more geophysical work, and then we want to get back and do phase 2 drilling. The first phase on the first 5 holes that we've done definitely merit a phase 2. And so, I mean, right now at a $2.2 million market cap, I think we're incredibly cheap, and I think the reason for that is a couple things. Not everybody knows about our story. Not everybody knows about ATCO, and these drill results in a good uranium market would have gotten a lot more attention, but unfortunately they haven't. But I do think that will change, and I do think once the uranium market as a whole, even if it comes back anywhere close to what it was 4 to 6 months ago, I think people will start to understand our value add proposition and how good this project really is, especially given our valuation. And so we're definitely going to be going in to do more geophysical work, start our phase 2 program, and go from there. I mean, we love this project, and like I was saying at the beginning, we still have our projects on in southwestern Newfoundland, and so once we start getting more updates and everything on the clean energy infrastructure projects that are getting built off the coast of Newfoundland, that's another thing that I think can propel ATCO to another level. And unfortunately, it's on government timeline, but it will happen. So, right now, unfortunately, our share price is definitely at its all-time low. But I do think that there's plenty of upside at these levels, and so we're going to have a lot more news and a plan going forward for our exploration work. So definitely stay tuned.
That's right.
David, I think any questions from anyone?
Okay, well, thank you guys. Great presentation there. We will kick off the Q&A portion of the webinar right now. Reminder to everybody online, you can type your questions into the chat box and we'll get to as many as we can. So guys, we have a few questions here. You started the call off with some history of the company. How much of your attention is really taken up by some of those hydrogen storage projects right now? And is there anything that you need to do to prepare those projects for things to come down the road?
There isn't right now. I mean, we've done all of our work that we really needed to do. We've already done those and we kept our claims in good standing. We own those projects. And so we don't have to do anything right now. We've been solely focused on the Atlantic project as of right now while we wait for more updates from the Newfoundland government. Is that fair to say, Neil?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we're sitting tight. There's no not much energy on advancing those projects right now, just because the uranium story is so exciting, and we're so right now dedicated to advancing the uranium assets in this market. I think one of the things that has been a marker of success for uranium is being early. And I think that even though there has been excitement over the last 6 months in the uranium space, I think we're still early to the game and there's more excitement to come in terms of spot price, supply demand. There's M&A starting to happen with the deal announced this morning. So yeah, it's definitely the highlight of our focus right now.
Okay, and maybe just to wrap up on the hydrogen storage, does it cost you anything for care and maintenance? Is it
no, we paid for that already.
Okay. So let's move on to uranium then, and really what attracted you to the uranium sector in general? And I know I guess you touched on this a little bit in the presentation, but specifically why the Athabasca Basin?
Neil, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think that partly it's one of those things where when the Athabasca Basin stands out worldwide as the place to be, the answer to the question of why the Athabasca Basin is why not, because there's just no better place in the world to be finding high-grade uranium, and it fits the clean energy story that Etienne started the company for. So I think that's a perfect merger there. And it's also what I know. I've done uranium exploration since about 2004. So that's going on 20 years, starting off claim staking all across the Athabasca Basin to managing exploration programs early on. So it's what I know. I've reviewed dozens and dozens of projects, read dozens and dozens of reports. So I'm very familiar with it and how one project stacks up against another and what ingredients you need. And this one definitely fits the bill in terms of having all the right ingredients to find something.
Yeah, the project you're talking about, the Atlantic project,
yeah.
Located in the north, a bit off the Wollaston Trend, but you are close to infrastructure, historical projects, and probably most importantly, ISO's Hurricane deposit, which is the highest grade deposit in the world. So what is it about the Atlantic project that's really most exciting to you?
I'd say for me, the most exciting part of it is that there's so few exploration drill holes on the project, despite having all the right ingredients. It's on a graphite-rich corridor, which is, if you don't have graphitic conductors on your project, then you might as well be looking elsewhere, because even though not all uranium deposits are directly on a graphitic conductor, they're always related to a graphitic conductor for any deposit of any scale. So that's number one. We've got that. We've got historical records of some of those historical drill holes finding, small amounts of uranium, and it's not uncommon. That's not a common thing. So oftentimes when you've got elevated uranium, there's something going on. So we just need to find exactly where that is with some more drilling.
And Standard Uranium, you mentioned them in the call as well. They're the operator of the project. What does it bring to the project? And then I guess how much involvement does ATCO have with respect to the technical direction of the project?
For sure. So I'd say that, I've got a fairly biased opinion, but I would rank Standard Uranium's exploration team as probably the best in the Athabasca Basin right now in terms of being young, knowledgeable, hungry for a discovery. The amount of connections they have to the best contractors out there just makes the money spent on any project just so valuable. Just about every project we've been operating is under budget and just on a tight timeline. So without a doubt, Standard brings together a lot of that technical success. With myself being on the board of both companies, I've got some amount of direction to make sure we're, doing the appropriate thing. I've got no doubt that Sean and the technical team on Standard are doing the right thing. But with my involvement, I can make sure that for the shareholders of ATCO, we're on the right track, anyways.
I think Neil has done an amazing job, and working with the Standard guys. I mean, I could say it's not my first time working with different exploration teams, and Standard has been great. It's very, very easy to work with. We've had a great relationship so far, and they made everything very, very easy, and it's been a great partnership.
Yeah. Okay, good. No, good to hear. Now, ATCO just finished its first round of drilling. So exactly what were you targeting, and do you believe this drilling was successful? Did you hit the structure, alteration, uranium anomalies that you really wanted to?
Yeah. So I'd say we had success. We didn't find the high grade, 20% across, 5-10 meters, which is what the ultimate goal is. Once you're there, then we're off to the races. But when we've hit the elevated uranium, that's a good sign. We intercepted the basement structure that we need to do, which is the basement graphitic conductor. So we've got that, and we've explained some of that gravity anomaly with the clay alteration, the dravite. So, there's definitely work to do in this area that we targeted. We can definitely follow up on what we've learned, put it into the 3D model, and already there's areas that are being highlighted as areas to follow up, looking up at lining up the structures with where the uranium anomalies came from. And on top of that, there's other targets that haven't even yet been tested. So we've got more work to do on the drilling side in completely new areas. So I'm really excited to get working on that too.
Yeah, so these deposits are pretty small, and you can go from nothing to something in just a matter of meters. You think you have enough pathfinders and really info to help you vector onto a potential discovery here?
Absolutely, there's definitely enough room to hide a deposit on the project. Oftentimes they're 10 meters wide, 15 meters wide, and yeah, like you said, you can be 5-10 meters away and not hit anything, but with the 3D modeling we've got access to nowadays compared to when I started out, I think that there's a good chance that there will be a more rapid progression of discoveries, just with the ability to look at things in 3D, map them out, make on the fly targeting decisions. Just that ability is just so fantastic these days.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you said a few minutes ago you're operating under budget right now. What's your budget for 2024, and how much do you have for your next steps?
I mean, we're basically already done our first year commitments. We need to spend like another couple $100,000 to finalize our first year commitments on the Atlantic project. And then we just completed a financing at a nickel. And so our next year's budget, once we finish up the geophysical surveying that we're hoping to do sometime, let's say in the fall, we'll come up with a whole plan. We're working on that right now. with the Standard team so we can outline our goal forward plan and exactly what's next. Once we finish that, then we're going to come out with a full budget for 2025 and what that will look like.
Okay. So as far as what comes next, you said geophysics and further drilling. Do you have a timeline behind that work next year, and any catalysts we can look forward to?
I think the geophysical is going to start a lot earlier. I think hopefully we were talking with the Standard guys on Friday, and we're hoping for that to start sometime in the fall. So we're going to come up with a whole plan shortly, announce that to the market, and then start that work right away. And then once we finalize that work, then we're going to put out our drill plans right afterwards, and we can even start that even at the end of 2024. So there's still a lot more things to come.
Right. Okay. I guess last question here. You talked a little bit about evolving permitting up in the basin, more permitting to get drill holes and permitting deposits. But, how important is it to have agreements in place with First Nations and other local communities in the Athabasca Basin long before you start out drilling?
Oh, for sure. I think that some newcomers to the Athabasca Basin might be surprised that it does take a while to get that done, because you need to involve the government first of all. Then you need to talk to all the appropriate people on the First Nation side, and without that, you just can't get a simple drill plan permitted. So getting on that as soon as possible is the best practice, and luckily that's been already been completed by Standard Uranium, and they did a fantastic job, and all the agreements are in place. So yeah, we're off to the races.
Right. Okay. I did lie. I said last question, but there's another one here. Maybe can you comment a little bit on your share structure, and do you have any institutional involvement?
We have about 77 million shares outstanding around there, and we don't have any institutions following us at the moment. Like I said, I'm the largest shareholder. Then we have a good kind of family and friends network. Red Cloud's a shareholder as well. But it's mostly been it's a retail shareholder base at the moment. And so what we're trying to do is, as we continue to build and improve our project and continue to drill, that's when hopefully we'll start growing our market cap and then attracting a lot more institutions. Because right now at a $2 million market cap, we're too small to attract any institutions, but hopefully that will change over the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay. Yeah, you got to start somewhere, and it sounds like you guys are on track.
Exactly.
Okay. Etienne and Neil from ATCO Mining, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for setting this up, guys. Appreciate it.
You're quite welcome. Thank you, everybody else, for tuning in. Red Cloud Securities will be back next week when Alina sits down with Cobalt Blue. So that's July 2nd at 3 p.m. Eastern. So note that special time in the afternoon. So have a great day, everyone, and thank you for supporting Red Cloud's webinar series.